Strong looks different for each of us, and it's time to put focus on our unique journeys that get us there. This space created weekly is for athletes to improve their mindset in order to better navigate challenges that come up in sport and in different seasons of life. On this show, we ask the questions that lead to better answers and have the conversations that truly matter. This is the Becoming Your Strong podcast. Hey, you guys, welcome back to the Becoming Your Strong podcast. We are continuing our way on to the guest series. Today's guest is something and someone that I have been waiting for quite some time. I think it's been a long time coming for the both of us, but I'm also so happy that we've waited as long as we have to have this conversation, simply because over the last couple of months, I feel like I've seen so much growth and progress, both in a career standpoint from an athletics as well as just personally as an individual. So Greyson, I am so excited for you to share your story today and to share all the fun things that have been going on behind the scenes. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Well, you chose to have Katie on first, which makes a lot of sense because she's the best of us. But then I listened to your podcast, like, wow, Kayla's so good at this. And I got a little jealous. I was like, I want to talk to her. So I'm glad we were finally able to put it together.
Yes, we're here and we're doing this. And I think the thing that I love most about it is I've had the opportunity to race alongside both you and Katie, but I haven't been able to sit down and just have a full blown conversation about life and where you've been and why you ended up in this world. So I'm excited to hear about your story and just what makes you you. So let's start there. Just share a little bit more about your background and how in the world you even got to where you're at today.
Sure. Well, I've always been coaching on some level, and I've always been an athlete on some level. So before even the Spartan DEKA world, I was a decathlete in college and a wrestler and runner and an all-sport athlete in high school. So sports with lots of variety have always kind of been my thing. And then I started coaching track and field. When I was a high schooler, I coached kids clubs and different things like that. And then I spent some time coaching strength and conditioning for a collegiate basketball team. So coaching and racing has always been a part of my life.
Yeah.
After being a collegiate decathlete, I moved to Salem, Oregon, and kind of had a year of nothing where I just didn't really train for anything in particular. It was a weird year for me, and really started kind of needing something. So one day I was actually visiting my parents, and they had a Spartan race on their TV, and my dad and I were standing this close to the TV with our mouths open, just this is it. This is the next thing for me. So I dove really hard into training for Spartan, and eventually became a member of their pro team for a few years, which obviously led to DEKA. So I was in the middle of training for Spartan races, and then Spartan came out with their DEKA event, as a response to HYROX coming to the States. And I was like, well, I was a decathlete, and DEKA, it's in the name.
Yeah.
I should probably give this a whirl. So, and immediately found some DEKA events right here in Boise at the gym, one of the gyms that I coach at now. And from there, that was the thing for me is hybrid racing is going to be my route and the thing that I do. On the coaching side of things, before I had even found DEKA, I had an online coaching program for outdoor athletes. So here in Idaho, there's a lot of hikers, bikers, hunters, just outdoors people. So most of my online coaching was geared towards trail runners and hunters and things like that. And then as I started getting good at DEKA and better at HYROX, it's almost entirely shifted over to hybrid coaching.
Wow, that is so cool. You're going to have to tell them a little bit more about this decathlete thing because I've heard of it. I don't actually know what it is and what's involved. So tell me more about that.
Yeah, it's awesome. And it makes sense for kind of how I got here. It's a track and field event that has 10 of the events of track and field. So it's the short sprints would be the 100, the 400, and then the longest run is the 1500 meter. So you're doing, and then the 110 meter hurdle. So you're sprinting all the way up to the long sprints on the 1500. And then you're throwing the javelin, the shot put, and the discus for your throws. And then your jumps are high jump, pole vault, and long jump.
Yeah.
And what am I missing in there? I feel
is steeplechase in there? Because I've seen that. No, that's not in there. That's a whole separate thing.
Yeah. I think I've covered it. So there's a whole variety of athleticism in there between power, strength, and endurance. And as soon as one event ends in the decathlon, you have
Mhm.
30 minutes to like eat and recover before the next one starts.
Oh,
And
wow.
it's like spanned over 2 days. So even though it's a lot like shorter and more explosive than HYROX or DEKA, it's still a bit of an endurance event because you
For
have to
sure.
compete for 2 days straight on 30-minute intervals. So
For
it's really
sure.
cool.
For sure.
Oddly, my best events, and I think this like speaks to DEKA a little bit. My best events were the discus, the pole vault, and the 1500 meter, which is like a
Yep.
weird combination of capabilities.
Yeah, things to be good at. That's so
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, I never did track or field or anything like that growing up.
Mhm.
I've noticed a lot of people that are really good at DECA and HYROX did grow up doing that. So clearly there's something to it. But
Yeah.
how did your Spartan days go? Like tell me more about that cuz I've seen like I know I saw who were some of the main people that were out there at the time. I know Ryan Kent was a big one that was out there
Mhm.
at the time. I think Rich was another one of them. Like, where did you all fit into that on the pro team?
Sure. Um, I would have been considered a B teamer for sure. They're guys like Ryan Kent, Ryan Atkins. There's so many great athletes kind of in that field. The only time I'd ever get remotely close to them is on their really bad days.
Okay.
Um, and that was a unique time in my life as an athlete because I was like fresh out of college. I was pretty broke. The only piece of training equipment I had to my name was a sandbag I bought from Home Depot
Oh
and
my
wrapped in
gosh.
Gorilla Tape.
Yeah.
So my training really didn't take me to the level I wanted to get to. I think my best finish was probably a 10th place finish at like a Spartan National Series event in Seattle. And I swear to God, the reason I like moved up and caught so many people is because it was so cold that I honestly think my like extra body fat protected me when the really like skinny runners were literally going hypothermic and just like crashing out.
Wow.
So I never quite like Ryan Kent, like these guys like Hunter McIntyre, Ryan Kent. These were heroes of mine that I was like, oh, it'd be so crazy to even run close to them in a race.
Yeah.
So that never happened for me in Spartan. I was never like at that level. I had to find other sports to get closer.
I was about to say, like, how cool is that to stand on the starting line with so many of those men that you just mentioned this 2 weekends ago?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have to imagine that your time in Spartan taught you so much and it built up like just this grit and this inspiration to be next to these guys. Like, what was that
Mm-hmm.
like for you to have that moment?
Oh, it's really cool. And Ryan Kent and I've talked to him at length because I feel like I've learned a lot from him over the years. I started watching him in Spartan and then in DEKA and HYROX and wanted to be like him for so long. I like who he
Mhm.
is. I like how he races. Um, and so it is kind of wild to be racing him over and over again in all of these like major races that we've been at this year. Um, it really has been pretty incredible. I think in the early Spartan days, I needed that time to learn how to race because I
Right.
was I was a wild man. I would go way faster than I should. I'd be reckless and I'd go hard on things I thought I was good at. So it was almost like I needed that time to figure out how to gain some racing wisdom before I
Mhm.
could even have the capability to stand next to those guys in the first place.
And I think that that's so important for the listeners and just for all of us to remind ourselves of is like, yes, we want to get to where we're going so bad, but it's these
Mhm.
moments like this journey that we're on right now that's going to really pay off for us if we truly are living in the present moment and we're not
Mhm.
missing the lessons that it's teaching us. And I think that
Oh
that's
yeah.
such a great, it just highlights that so perfectly of like, if you did not go and race Spartan and you didn't get, your butt handed to you by all these guys,
Yeah.
who knows where you would be now and maybe
Oh
not on
yeah.
the starting line of the Elite 15. So it's interesting to think about.
Yeah. I think one of the coolest things in racing is knowing when you're doing it the right way.
Mm,
When you can trust that you're running your race your way.
yeah.
In DC, everyone goes out hot in every single race I've ever
Oh
done.
yeah.
And you'll notice the way that I start, I kind of just sit in the pack for most of my races. Even at the DECA World Championship, I was kind of slated to win that thing, and there's like 6 dudes running ahead of me on the first lap, and I think there's a confident moment I have where I go like too fast, too fast, too fast, and I feel like I'm sitting in the right spot.
Awesome.
In Spartan, there are so many times where I'd be like, just sit on Ryan Kent and see how long you can hang, or like latch onto this front pack and just test yourself and like use your grit to get through. And then they'd drop me and I'd like walk home,
Yeah.
So it is really enjoyable to feel like you're racing the right way, and like, okay, I'm a wise
Yeah,
racer now. I'm one of the older guys in the group that knows how to do this. So
for
pretty
sure.
cool.
Do you feel like in your DC race, especially your first time being in the Elite 15 field, do you
Mhm.
feel like you did that you raced your own race that day?
Oh yeah, yeah. Um, well, I think there's for me it's pretty easy when Cole Learn is in the race because we have similar strategies, and I think
Okay.
and we can get into this if you want to, but in
Yeah, for sure.
HYROX, most people racing HYROX start too fast.
Hmm.
The first lap is too fast, the ski is too hard, and then we sell our souls to the sleds, and then people are hanging on at that point. It's like you're hanging on for 40 minutes to 60 minutes of your race. Like that's bad strategy, right?
Yeah.
So Cole is really great at starting slow. And so if at any point before sled pull, if you're ahead of Cole, you might have made a mistake.
Right.
Uh, so for in DC, it was really easy for me to be like, well, I'm gonna sit behind Cole because I know what he's about to do on the burpees, and then I'm gonna execute my race plan from there as well.
That's amazing. Yeah, I was about to say, I'm so curious to know like some of your highs, some of your lows, like during the race in general, because I'm sure over what 50 to 60 minutes, there's a lot that's going on mentally. Like, do you feel like you were just in flow state, or were there moments where you're like, I have to talk myself off this pain cave
Mm.
ledge right now because
Oh
I'm feeling
yeah,
it?
yeah, absolutely. Well, it was kind of an odd race because it started the way that I had expected. I
Yeah.
knew that Dylan and Rich Ryan were going to try to set the tone as runners. I knew that Cole was going to hang back, and I knew there was going to be a handful of guys that wanted to prove themselves early
Hmm.
and lock in. So I was like, on the first run, I might be sitting in 10th, and that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
But by the time we had gotten to the sleds, I had made up significant ground on the sleds. And then Cole and I took the lead after sled pull. And I thought, that's not what I had expected. I didn't think that I'd be ahead of like the greats like Dylan Scott and Rich Ryan at that
Yeah.
point of the race. And so I do know that in HYROX anything can happen. So I thought like, well, I'm still just gonna run my own way,
Hmm.
and see. And I thought like, I'll see those guys again. Like they're gonna come back. Um, I think you really have to trust your own system and trust like the feeling you're looking for in your race.
Yeah.
And I had so at that point there was like a crazy high. I was like, what's gonna happen? Like I'm in second place right now, and the
Hmm.
big dogs are somewhere back there. So I had to like settle down and cool off a little bit at that moment. Be like, okay, just because you're in second now doesn't mean you can just gun it. And I was like, there's a lot of race left. So I was like, calm down, relax. The race hasn't happened yet. There's more racing to come.
Yep.
Um, and then coming off of the burpee broad jumps, I had some pretty serious stomach pain that
Oh,
didn't let me run the way that I wanted to. So that was a low moment of like, oh, if this gets worse, can I even keep striding?
yeah.
So that was frustrating because I know like I thought like that feeling if you're like if I push a little harder I'm gonna throw
Yep.
up.
Yeah, I
um,
know exactly that feeling.
yeah, and it's a pretty limiting feeling. It like messes with your breathing and all of that. So that certainly was a low moment. But then I was like, well, this is how it's gonna feel. You're just gonna have to hold this line and keep pushing. Try
Yeah,
to hammer the lunges, finish the wall balls, and that was kind of the game plan. So
for
there were
sure.
some wild highs and lows, and then I know I'm talking a lot, but
No, this is what we're here for. I want to hear it
okay,
all.
okay. I finished the race, and I was like, that was amazing. Like I'm so pleased with my time. I'm pleased with my finish, and I really didn't get frustrated until I had rewatched the race and realized at one point I was within like 5 wall balls of Dylan and had passed third place, and I was like, I could have been on the podium, and I wasn't locked in enough or good enough at the wall balls to have sealed the deal there. So there's a whole moment like I think we were in the hotel room like later, and I got up and I was like throwing things around. I was like, what? Like, come on. Like I'm good. Like I was that close and I didn't even get it. And Katie's like, I was screaming at you. Like I was trying to tell you. So it was like this whole, like, I was like so happy with my performance and then
Yeah,
so pissed that I was like this close and then
interesting.
sealed the deal. But it's been great because that's fueled so much of my training this week. So it's all
Yeah.
worth it.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that and want to almost dig in on that because perspective, as we know in this sport and in life, is truly everything. And so, how do you take a perspective like that and use it as fuel versus allow for it to be like the dampener, like where you're upset and you're frustrated and you're like, why
Hmm.
me? Right? Like,
Sure.
how have you used that? Like, talk to me more about how you've used
Mm.
the thought that you just said about I'm not going to let this take me down. I'm going to let this bring me forward. How did you do that and in a way that's brought you forward in your training journey?
Yeah. I kind of This is kind of a two-part answer, if that's
Yeah.
okay. Every race I've ever come back from, I at least in the last couple of races, to be honest, I'm hitting numbers that I never dreamed of a year ago. So one thing that's been significant for me this year is the mentality around growth and so like language that I'm using going into every single one of my workouts. Here's a sentence I use all the time. I
Yeah.
say, I'm going to leave the door open to surprise myself. I think
Ooh,
so often we create narratives around our capability and self limiters around our capability. And we say, like, well, this is what I've done. So here's probably what I'm capable of. And the reality is, like, we have no clue what we're capable of. And that's probably the main reason we come to this sport in the first place, because we want to
absolutely.
find out. Like, we are searching to see what we can do with this body in this world. So one thing that's changed since DC particularly is, like, I was like, man, I ran 55:06. I was 6 seconds away from being in the 54 club, which is a very rare group of people, right?
Yep.
And if in the summer, if you would have said, "Hey, Greyson, you're going to be fighting for 54s," I was like, I was dreaming of 57s, right? So I think, like, the lesson there for me has always been, like, when I come back from a race and I lock into my training and I get on this treadmill over here, I'm going to tell
Yes.
myself, like, leave the door open to surprise yourself. Like, don't write the narrative too early. You don't know what's possible yet. So that's part one.
I love
Part
that.
two, I remember, like, in Deka Fit, when everyone was afraid of the assault bike, everyone hated it. Everyone thought Bubbles was the only person that would ever be good at it. Um, I got kind of pissed at all the conversation about, like, oh, the bike is so miserable. It's so terrible. And I decided, like, well, if this is the thing everyone's going to be afraid of, I'm going to make sure they're afraid of me when I'm on it. And I just
Heck
decided, like,
yeah.
this like thing that sucks is now going to become my weapon. So coming back from DC, my wall ball focus, I call it the wall ball warpath. I've
Yeah.
just decided, like, I want to have a persona where not, well, like, if you show up in the wall balls next to me, you're in trouble, because this is now going to become my weapon. And
Yep.
that kind of stuff doesn't happen overnight, but I will make it happen. And so since DC,
Yeah.
I've decided, like, I'm not losing another podium because of bad wall balls. It's not going to
Yeah.
happen again.
I think that that's such gold. You've been dropping so much like gold, like great wisdom statements. And there was something, I can't remember if it was when we got back from DC or maybe I was sitting in the hotel, but you were on Perform Better's either Instagram Live or podcast or something of
Mm-hmm.
some sort. And you were talking about this idea of your relationship with pain. And I
Mm-hmm.
want to go back to that because I
Oh,
think you
cool.
started to talk about, especially with your stomach issues that you had during the race. I'm sure
Yeah.
you probably utilized it in
Mm-hmm.
that race specifically. But do you just want to like tell us a little bit more about that conversation and just overall your relationship with pain as it comes to racing?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, Racing, I'll start broad and then
Yeah.
I'll work my way to the actual language that we try to implement in our racing. Um, Racing may be the easiest thing Katie and I do.
Yeah.
Like race day is like, all I got to do is execute this race. Because honestly, like, our life, we have three kids. We're working what feels like nonstop. Like, 8 hours of sleep is an absolute gift. And there's a lot of, honestly, like, emotional challenges around raising these kids that we love so much and fighting for our family,
Yeah.
and trying to be the best parents that we can be. Right. So, um, there is an ache we feel regularly for our family when we're away from them, when we want to be better parents, when we want better for them. Honestly, the way that we experience pain in racing feels so much easier because it's pain we chose, right?
Yeah.
That's quite a bit different than just dealing with circumstances in life. So, with all of that said, um, I think Katie and I are pretty well acquainted with pain, and it's something that we've had to learn to get quite comfortable in. And I think that's the exact difference in racing that really matters. There's research that's come out recently, actually, that speaks to how two different mindsets can dramatically change your performance. If you're in
Mhm.
the middle of suffering and you're thinking, this hurts, I can't wait for it to be over, you're already screwed. You've chosen the wrong mental path for
Yep.
yourself. But if you can be in the middle of suffering and you can greet your pain like an old friend and say, I know this, I've been here before, I'm going to settle in and get comfortable right here, then you can actually make it feel easier, and you can win that battle in the moment
Yep.
by choosing that mental path. So one of the ways that I do that is so cheesy. I greet my pain like a friend. Like when it shows up and you have that like fight or flight moment where the
Yeah.
alarm bells are going off. You're like, oh, this hurts and I'm scared. Like the fear and the anxiety starts to kick in. I just casually greet my pain like, what's up, pain? I know you. And
Yep.
people make fun of me for that all the time.
Yeah.
Like it's so cheesy. Like, hey, pain, I know you. But
Yeah.
it's like you're not scaring me. You're not shocking me. You're not going to distract me from my goals today. You're not going to limit my belief today because I know you. Like I know what you are. I know what you're going to try to do to me, and I'm fine.
Yep.
So that's kind of like my mental system in the moment.
Yeah. I think that's good. Have you read the book, How Bad Do You Want It?
I haven't. Tell
Okay.
me
That's
what you're
some
thinking about.
it's one that you should pick up. I think you would thoroughly enjoy it because it's specifically on endurance sports racing, and they
Cool.
talk about pillars of what you're talking about with that. But just different pillars of endurance racing and how it creates basically like a bulletproof mindset within those of us that are in endurance sports. So
Yeah,
it
cool.
reminded me of what you were saying, but more or less, I think my thoughts around the pain are yes, greeting it for sure. And
Mhm.
I've said to myself in the past of I'm just uncomfortable. Like you're fine. Like I've been through worse. And I
Yeah,
used that so many times and then all of a sudden like I blink and I'm like, "Oh, yeah, like I'm actually fine. I'm not dying. I'm just uncomfortable." Like it's fine. We've been in
yeah,
discomfort before. You just have to keep finding ways to take step forwards. But I think that that's it's such a humorous and comical way to do it where like when you
yeah.
smile and you're like,
Uh-huh.
oh, I feel instantly better about everything.
Oh
That to
yeah.
me is what I think it would bring up for some people. So I think that's a great tool for sure.
Oh man. Oh, you're totally right. You're totally right. I think one of the things that we're facing when we're experiencing pain, the limiter in pain may not be how it feels as much as the way that it scares us. I'm kind of
Yes.
obsessed with how fear and anxiety creeps into like our moment. And I really think because you probably tell me if you've experienced this, if you've
Yeah.
seen it or if you've felt it, but pretty typically we'll train for months for an experience and we'll get on the start line. And a lot of times we will mentally abandon the goal before this race even starts because we are too anxious and too afraid
Mhm.
to stay committed to the plan when the nerves and the anxiety kick in, right? Have you felt that?
Honestly, Grayson, that is the number one thing that I'm dealing with right now is I get so excited and I'm so delved into a goal. And then I get to the starting line and it's like, doesn't happen as much during teams races, but it happens a lot during individual races because I'm the only person that I can count on, which I
Right.
know for some
Totally.
people's it's flipped.
Uh-huh.
Um, versus like in a teams race, I'm like, oh, I got to show it for this person. There's no plan B. Like there's only a plan
Mhm.
A. But individual, I'm like, why do I do that? Why do I count myself out before the gun even goes off and before I give myself a chance to try and shock myself? So
Yeah.
yes, the answer is
What do
yes.
you okay, I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah.
What do you think the answer is? Why do you do it?
Um, I honestly think it is truly just the fear of being in pain and knowing that like the moments are not fun
Mhm.
whatsoever. But also, I know on the other side of that, there is no better feeling than getting past that moment and being like, holy cow, I just did that. So
Yeah.
I keep those both in mind, but truly it's the fear of like in DEKA now, like I think the reason why I did so well in HYROX and why I actually enjoyed my first HYROX race is because there was no expectation. I didn't know when I was going
Mhm.
to hurt. I didn't know what it was going to
Yeah.
feel like. In DEKA,
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, here we go. This is where it comes because you just know like when the boiling point is. So it's just that fear of knowing that you're going to feel this and it could suck
Totally.
and it could take you out.
Yeah. I think you're dead on. I think the fear of the pain dislocates somebody from their mission right from the start.
Hmm.
The nerves kick in and we abandon the plan. I see it all the time. But then I think there's another level too. When the pain starts to matter to you less or you get more experience, I think another reason we may abandon the plan is when we feel like some sort of social pressure, like who's
Yes.
gonna see me fail, or what are people gonna think if I can't handle the pain, or this is what people think I'm capable of. I don't know. I think from the highest level to the beginner, we feel the fear of pain and the fear of social pressure. And I'm really curious about how we release that. I think I've got a few systems that I use, but I'd be curious to hear yours too.
I have to go back to definitely my why, and
Mm-hmm.
what, not even just like the why did I start hybrid racing and why did I get into fitness, but like why
Mm-hmm.
am I here trying to exceed at this specific goal? That is
Mm-hmm.
usually the one thing that brings me back to like ground level.
Yeah.
Because my story is so personal, right? Like not being able to get off the couch, depressed, lethargic, overweight, to now like I'm lining up with some of the best athletes in the world. Like that's a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And not just
Huge.
in the way of like, oh wow, like look at how cool I am, but like most people don't pull themselves out of that hole. And I
Yeah.
did that. I showed up for
Yeah.
myself in that way. So that's a very special thing for me. That's usually the top thing that I go to, but different situations call for different stories,
Oh
you
yeah.
know?
Yeah. I think you're dead on. I think for most of us, reconnecting to our why behind the whole journey is how we commit to the fight when it really starts to hurt. Because
Yep.
that's actually the same process for me. I tell athletes all the time, like, if this is actually about medals and times and how we finish and who we beat and how we look in the process, it's feeble. It doesn't matter,
Mhm.
right? Like it matters a little, but it's not gonna be nearly as fulfilling as like pursuing the version of yourself that you want to see when things get hard. And
Yeah.
so I think that reconnection to the why is really, really important. I think for me, there's a release piece
Mhm.
of that too, where Katie and I always talk about like uh, committing to the work and releasing the outcome. Where we say like, I have no control over how this goes. And honestly, the people who understand
Yes.
racing know that too. So
Mhm.
if I blow up and have something go sideways, or if I get beat by 5 reps, I can't control the guy wall balling next to me. I can
Nope.
only control my experience, my effort. So I do think there's some freedom in saying like, all I can do is give my best in this moment. I can't control the outcome, the time. There's so many variables that can come up in a race.
Yep.
And so I think I find a lot of freedom in doing exactly what you're talking about. Like, I'm going to reconnect to the why. When things get hard, one of the things I'll tell myself is like, I'm not about to go home and tell my kids I quit, right?
That's a
like,
good one.
like,
Yep.
like, if my kids ever ask me like, hey, what happened? The answer is not going to be like, well, it hurt, so I quit. That's not
Yep.
that's not ever what I'm going to say
Nope.
to my kids. But then I'm going to say I have no control over how this race ends, but I can control what I do in the middle of it. I usually
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think that's my secondary is my goals have shifted. It's
go.
gone from I want to redefend this title or I want to hit this specific outcome to I want to execute. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing more frustrating than
Yeah.
laying in bed at night and being like, I gave up on myself and I didn't execute in the way that I knew
Yeah.
that I could have. Like
Yeah.
as long as I go in, if I execute the plan in the way that I went into the race wanting to and it
Mm-hmm.
didn't work, I can live with that.
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
that's now fine with me, but it takes time to get there. And so even like you said, I now coach my athletes on that of like, who cares what happens? Like that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What matters is like, are you showing up achieving the goal that you want to achieve? Specifically, like, are you showing up as the person that you want to show up as in that
Yeah.
race? Because if you do that, I guarantee that's gonna be way more than any medal or accomplishment, hands
Oh
down.
my gosh. Yes. I always tell people, I actually spoke about this at a Manly breakout event
Yeah.
recently. One of my biggest fears about myself since childhood until the moment I'm talking right now, my biggest fear is that I am inconsistent. My biggest
Mhm.
fear is that I would be one person in one place and a different person in another. So that I think that has led to one of my greatest desires for
Yep.
myself is that I want to be the same person everywhere that I go. And
Yeah.
so I think when you execute a race the way that you planned, or if you're facing something incredibly painful and challenging, and you stay committed to like the who you want to be in the middle of it, I love that feeling. Like it's
Yes.
like finally, for once, Grayson is like doing what he wants to do and
Yep.
being the person he set out to be.
Yep.
So that is that
Yeah.
is like that is a way better feeling than winning or hitting times or anything like that.
Yeah, and even going back to the social comment that you made too, of how we let the expectation and pressure of externals come into it. I find that like when you show up as yourself, people don't remember what you accomplished. They always remember who you showed up as. And that's going to
Yeah,
mean way more to them than anything else. So if
totally.
that's something that's always
Yeah,
like driven you, is maybe like how you show up externally to other people, and are you pleasing them? Are you impressing them? Whatever, which I hope that's not the case. But if that is
yeah,
something that drives you, showing up as your most authentic, genuine self, like people are going to remember that, and they're going to flock to that more than they'll ever flock to the person that's standing on top
sure.
of the podium.
Yeah.
So,
Katie reminds me of that so much. And a
yeah.
conversation we often have before racing is Katie's first ever DEKA event. She didn't know what she was doing. She didn't know who she was racing. And she was like, so I was her coach at the time, and I wasn't even there. I was watching online. And she's rubbing elbows with Nicole Miracle, who is one of the
Oh, get out
greatest
of town.
Spartan racers of all time,
Yeah.
an incredible racer, an incredible runner. And Katie's like fighting her and racing her and like bumping elbows. And we refer back to that race often. She's like, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know who I was racing. I just love racing. And she kind of has this like reckless, wild energy about her when she's racing. And I always say like, let's remember that version of Katie, the Katie that just loves racing and is
Mm,
wild and reckless and passionate. And let's keep being that, because like, that's why we got into this in the first place. We just
yeah.
want to race people, want to see what we're made of, And I think keeping it that simple can help sometimes.
That gave me goosebumps. I love that. That's such a wonderful moment for Katie and just for everyone to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Your mentioning of DECA though did make me think of. I asked some of my friends, specifically the people on the underdog team, like, "Hey,
Sure.
I'm having Grayson on the podcast. What do you want to know?"
Oh,
And what
cool.
they were really curious about was like, okay, we all try to do this DECA and HYROX thing and marry them to be good at both.
Yeah.
And honestly, there's not a ton of athletes out there that have been able to do that very well. However, you
Mm-hmm.
are one of those people that we see in our eyes of like, okay, he's seeing success in HYROX as well as he's seeing success in DECA at a very
Mm-hmm.
high level.
Yeah.
So we're all curious to know whether it's physical, mental, emotional, whatever it is, whether it be the needle movers, the process, the training, like what is allowing for you to truly be both at good disciplines, knowing how different they are.
Yeah. That's a great question. This is the one that people are asking me right now. So it's kind of fun to be the guy
Yeah.
who's spanning both worlds.
Yep.
Um, it might go, for me personally, some of it might go all the way back to genetics and childhood,
Yeah.
which is not the answer that people want to hear. But for example, like when I was a senior in high school, I could run a 4.5 40, which meant that like I probably should have been playing like college football. Like I had really great foot speed. My acceleration, my power output was really great. And I think as a senior in high school, I was weighing like 180 pounds. But my dad would not let me play cool sports. He wouldn't let
Of
me,
course.
because he was the head track coach and the head cross country coach. And I'd say, Dad, let me play football. I want to play football. He's like, nope, you're going to run cross country. I'm like, Dad, I'm 180 pounds and I run a 4.5 40 and I'm running cross country. And he goes, yep, you're team captain this year. And so I like think about this. Like when I was 17 or 18, I had like this crazy sprint power that I liked and this obligation to run because of my dad.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was the beginning for me personally of like, there's a genetic component where like I had this raw power thanks to my parents, and then this conditioning because of like I've been running mileage really early on. Um, so that's probably the part people don't want to hear is like if you wanted to
For
have
sure.
both, change your like choose your parents and start 20 years ago.
Yep.
But then on the more I think on the technical training side of things, Katie and I have always thought that we're going to train our volume for HYROX, because really that lactate threshold style training is what you should be doing for DEKA too, right? So it's like
Yes.
we're going to train this high volume for HYROX, and then we're going to make sure we're always layering in some bursty, powerful, explosive, and athletic stuff that matters in DEKA. So
Mm-hmm.
I could elaborate on the actual training if you want, but I want to pause and
Yeah, no, I mean, I think I'm always interested. I'm another nerd like you that coaches people on this stuff, so I'm sure we have
Okay.
a lot of similar views. But I like to tell people the point that if you train for HYROX, there's a high likelihood that you're going to find yourself getting better at DECA, and I'm seeing that now. So yes, let's
Yeah.
elaborate on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, DECA is a really diverse sport. DECA is
Hmm.
more diverse than HYROX because on the elite level of the DECA strong, you have more muscle, more power, bigger bodies that are able to create wattage, right? And when you go to the DECA fit, running wins. So DECA kind of spans like this whole world of endurance racing. So I think we need to acknowledge that. But like I said, so we start with like most of our workouts are going to be a HYROX level workout. Or let me dive into today.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah,
is that okay?
perfect.
Today I did a session that Katie programmed for me. Session number one was an hour and 45 minutes, but the actual work portion was an hour and 15 minutes of nonstop lactate threshold work. So
Wow,
2K ski, full sled push, 2K run, 15 burpee broad jumps, 1K at HYROX pace, 5-minute bike, and start that loop over.
wow.
So it was like a big threshold session. My body still aches and I still have a headache from it. Like it was a lot.
Yeah,
And that's where my conditioning is coming from, is what I would say. But my afternoon session today is going to be a combination of like assault bike recovery and reps for time. So when I say reps for time, I'm going to say like I'm going to start a clock and see how fast I can hit 10 reps of something. And
yeah,
it's going to be bursty and explosive and fast for two reasons. One, I want that kind of explosivity for DECA racing, but
yep,
I think when we think of muscular endurance training, we think, okay, I'm going to do a lot of reps over a long period of time. I'm going to do reps and reps and reps and reps. But the research around
clearly.
muscular endurance training shows that fast reps is going to change how you can oxygenate your muscles so that they can handle that work going forward. So
Yep,
really like the fast explosive stuff, really important for DECA, still good for HYROX, you know?
yep.
So I think it all comes together and it all matters. Um, if you can handle doing all of that in a day.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think the bigger, I'd be curious to actually hear your perspective on this is like we hear all these fun, sexy ideas and we want to try and incorporate them all. My thing as a coach is I think that the best training programs are the least sexy. They're
Yeah.
all about fundamentals.
Hmm.
Um, and that more people, 9 times out of 10, are overtraining their body than actually doing something that's productive. And
Yes.
so being able to find the thing that's in the middle that's like boring, but is still fun, but also like
Hmm.
not sending you overboard, like I think that's the hardest part. Like you talked about
Yeah.
how racing's the easy part. We did all the
Oh
work.
yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
work and figuring out where you as an athlete thrive. It's
Hmm.
tough, which is why we have jobs.
Oh
It's
yeah.
why we help
Yeah. It
people.
is. It is. Um, and I think if you look at the best endurance racers in the world, they really are the people who can do the same workout on repeat over and over and over again and not
Yep.
get bored. Like they're driven by the metrics. They like the metrics. And saying like how fast did I do it today and how fast can I do it next week? And that that's what they really like. Um, I will also add, like to your point that you made so well. One of my biggest desires in training right now is to feel good, and I,
Mhm.
I say like for those of us who are in our 30s and beyond, feeling good matters more than almost every other metric that we measure our training by. More than volume, more than intensity, more than our quality days. If you're not showing up to a race feeling good, you've done something wrong. If you're not showing up to your quality sessions feeling good, you're not moving the needle the way that you think you are.
Exactly. You'll enjoy this. Morgan's episode is coming out. Well, by the time that we release this episode, Morgan's episode will already have came out, but
Cool.
she talks about that. Like literally, she's like, I think the reason why I've done so well is because I've just health is my number one priority. If I don't
Oh,
feel good,
cool.
I don't do it. Like I pull the
Yeah.
plug. Like she
Hmm.
knows herself so well. She goes, as long as I'm healthy, like I'm showing up as the best version of me versus all these other people that are like hobbling on one leg,
Oh,
hoping that they can
yeah.
race because they
Yeah.
thought that they needed to do more
Hmm.
volume or they needed to do all these hard sessions. Like, no, I'm doing what feels good. And then I show up and I'm able to execute. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I really think the biggest factor for me this year is I've given up volume goals for the most part,
Mm.
because that was a stressor for me, and I never hit my volume goal. I'd get close, and then a kid would get sick, and that day was gone.
Yep.
So I never hit my volume goal. So I gave that up. I have a rough range that I'm looking for, but I'd say, okay, on these days, on these times, I'm showing up super ready for my quality session, and I'm going to make sure I hit my quality sessions in a way that I know is going to move the needle. And then the next priority after that is like, don't screw it up.
Yep.
I think we work so hard to build all of this fitness. The biggest thing that's going to harm our trajectory and progression is having like an injury cycle where we're like, okay, now that I'm not injured anymore, I'm going to push it and get
Mhm.
fit again. And then you injure yourself trying to get fit, and you start that cycle over and over and over again. I tell people, like, protect your wellness at all costs, because that's what's going to lead to your best possible results.
100%. 100%. Well, speaking of like wellness and overall, like it sounds like your head is in a really, really good space right now, especially we're at the very beginning of 2026 season. We've got HYROX Worlds coming up, DEKA Worlds at the end of the year. Like what's on your goals list? Like what's coming up for Greyson over this next, 6 to 8 months?
Yeah, good question. Katie and I have spent a lot of time trying to figure that out, because I am sitting at like 21st on the HYROX leaderboard right now, which
Whew.
is like pretty close to roll down territory for the
Mhm.
last major. Um, and so we're trying to figure out the schedule. What I know for sure is I want to finish a few more races and try to get some
Yeah.
more points for the next season. Mentally, I'm pretty dialed in, as treating myself as a professional athlete. There's very
Mhm.
few people in HYROX that are professional athletes, but I think if you tell yourself that you're more likely to get there. So right now, I'm training for DEKA SoCal this weekend. We're going to be
Amazing.
there for that. And then HYROX Miami, HYROX New York are my final races on the calendar this year. And I'd love to win those races. I think getting some great points going, leading into the HYROX season next year is really important to me. And then, a lot of that, like what excites me, I don't know if we have no plans to go to Sweden this year, actually, for the HYROX World
Yeah.
Championship, which I think people would find like pretty crazy. Last summer we decided we may not travel abroad this year for some like financial goals at home, some time with kids
Yeah.
goals in the summer. So really we're kind of setting up for next season in HYROX to be the time where I say, okay, when I show up to a major, I'm going to show up in a way where I feel dangerous instead of
Yeah.
just like floating on the bubble. So pretty close to that, I think, and I'm pretty excited for the races to come. I'm the kind of guy though that I can get obsessed with my own personal goals, and I could show up to a race that no one cares about and just be really passionate about hitting the numbers I want to see, or trying a new race style or something like that. So
But how awesome is that? Like how many other people guide their lives, guide their goals in that way? I can't say very, very many. Like I'm inspired here, sitting here listening to that, right? Because for me, it's like my number one event is always at the end of every single year. It's World
sure.
Championships. Like
Yeah.
you're looking at, for example, this HYROX World Championships of like, it's not make or break, like life goes on. And I'm looking at the longer term future. And I think that's such a great thing to like leave with the listeners is, yes, these immediate things, they're so cool. But like at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, if you ever question about where you should really be and what you should really be focusing your energy and effort on, like think about the long-term version of you and
Yeah.
what are they going to appreciate most? What are they going to need most? It sounds like that's how you operate.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. And now I do think to make it to the HYROX World Championship in the Elite 15, you have to be sold out for the sport.
Yep.
There's no doubt about that. I think, and I might change my mind next week and decide like
Yep.
I'm going.
Yeah. Yep.
But, but I think there's some things that have to happen for that to be true. But as of right now, we're kind of in a setting up phase of our life where, again, a few financial goals, a few things with our family, a few things like around our property that need to be like finished up.
Mhm.
And then really we're kind of looking at next season as I've built to this certain level as a racer. Like next season, we're kind of talking about like, that's going to be the time where I say we're all in. I'm going to race everything that I possibly can. And I think by that time I'll be ready to contend for those qualifying spots.
Heck yeah. Heck yeah. Well, I want to make sure that any listeners that maybe don't follow you, both your career, what you do as Kilgore coaching, but also as an athlete, I want to make sure that they follow you. So tell them about like where people can follow you and connect with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're curious about my coaching, you can find my website, kilgorecoaching.com. And that'll pretty quickly just take you to like a phone call with me.
Yep.
I like starting with a phone call. And then I always do this. When I get ready to share my Instagram handle, I forget what it is. And Katie normally corrects me in the middle of it. So I got to, okay, my Instagram, I'll like start saying what it is. She's like, that's not your Instagram handle. What are you doing right now? Like, how do you run a business?
This is again why we have Katie.
Yes, exactly. Oh, for so many things.
Yes.
So Kilgore.coaching is my Instagram handle. You can find me there. We're often sharing HYROX and DekaFit tips from our gym right here. So if you're looking for any more information out of us, you can find us there.
Yes, absolutely. Guys, seriously, he's absolutely wonderful. If you couldn't tell already, that he's definitely a wonderful person to connect with in the space. But I'm so excited for you, for Katie, for the life that you guys are creating, and not just as individual athletes, but like together. It's so freaking awesome to watch from afar. And I will be excited then to see you at that next race, whatever it may or may not be. But I appreciate you coming on the podcast today and dropping all the wisdom.